2. Hello and welcome. Thanks for attending today's webinar, Improving Safety and Quality with Computer Vision. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few items regarding this platform. At the bottom of your screen, you'll notice a handful of widgets, mainly Q&A, which you can utilize to submit any questions you have to today's session. For viewing purposes, you can also expand your viewing window by clicking on the icon found in the top right corner of the slide viewer. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the Help widget. And lastly, take a moment to fill out the survey at the end of the webinar. Thank you. And at this time, I'll turn it over to your presenters, Noah and Ilya.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. We're excited to have you here today. My name is Ilya Eliashevsky. I'm the portfolio manager for our digital innovation team here at Insight. In a nutshell, I get to work with a lot of our different technology leaders and thought leaders and clients like yourselves to explore new cutting edge technologies, whether it's in the cloud, it's data and AI, it's intelligent edge. And in this case, today we're talking about computer vision and how that can help you with product quality, safety, inventory management, and a bunch of different other use cases that we'll get into in a second. Noah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Noah Santarello, and I'm the cloud portfolio lead for the digital innovation team at Insight. I'm a technologist by trade. I have about 15 years of experience architecting systems, building software. I focus mainly on cloud, modern applications, and data and edge. I've built systems for hospitality and hotels, parking garages for edge projects for parking garages, even some logistics as well. So I have a broad spectrum of experience, and I'm excited about talking some of the edge things with you today.
Perfect. And really, as a portfolio manager, what we also do is we're trying to pair the technology with the business outcomes that you and all the attendees are experiencing today in manufacturing. So focusing on what might be relevant to you, how do you get started, and we have different ways that we can engage and help our clients in their digital transformation journey, and ideally achieving the ROI or the business outcomes that they're looking to do. So today's session, we'll go through the agenda. We'll talk about what is computer vision. We cherry-picked a couple recent client projects that we worked on in manufacturing specifically to kind of showcase here's what's going on, here's what others are doing, here's some of the outcomes that they're achieving when putting these different devices and all these different pieces together. So we'll go through those real-world examples just to get the ideas going. Obviously, manufacturing and all the attendees that are joining today, some are previous clients, some are past clients, some are new. So you're all at different stages in your journey. So we'll just go through and help showcase what might be possible and then relate it to your business. We know that a lot of the folks joining are in different parts of manufacturing, whether it's logistics, whether it's manufacturing metal or manufacturing food. So there's, it's kind of a broad spectrum. It's really just to get the ideas flowing. I'll then pass it back over to Noah. Noah's going to go through what's the hardware and software setup, required? How do these different components from the technology of the actual devices, but then also piping the data to edge gateways and up into the cloud, and who's using the data and how you access it all the way through. So what's the typical setup involved? How do you scale that out? Since we have done a few projects already, there's often lessons learned. So we want to share those lessons with you guys today, so that hopefully there's things that you could consider if this is a new project that you're looking to start as we get going. How do you scale something from a pilot to a production deployment to multi-sites or multi-use cases? As mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A, and we'll try to pick them up as they come in, or at the end of the session, we'll hit up answers. If we don't get to them during this webinar, we'll make sure to follow up afterwards. We have your emails, so we can kind of make sure you get the appropriate answers to questions that you might have. Any topics relevant, so please do let us know what's on your mind. And then we'll wrap up today with just different ways that we help our clients get started, because often, how do I prove the business case, or how do I select where to start? Because there's so many different cool options and exciting capabilities, but just kind of taking that first step forward is a good is where Insight can help, and we have some different offers and way to approach that. So we'll kind of explain that to you. Okay, so Noah, why don't you quickly just explain what is computer vision?
Sure. So computer vision, if we were to step back and look at the core of what it is, it's taking some kind of image data which contains spatial information, or video which contains both spatial and temporal information, and trying to glean some kind of higher order understanding of what is actually going on in that image or video. And usually the purpose is to achieve some sort of business outcome. So video or images in, and some kind of understanding out, right? Similar to a human perception system, where there's eyes which kind of see the world around you and a brain that does the processing. There's the same setup with an edge setup. So you have the camera, which kind of functions similar to your eyes. It views the world. And then you have some kind of edge gateway, which is a small computer which is able to do the processing on that input and come up with some kind of output that you can use in your business processes. So at its core, that's what it is, and that's kind of what we're talking about today. Just examples of computer vision in practice, there's just reading documents or optical character recognition, OCR. So that's how can you take a document, which is an image, and read and understand the text. That's kind of the output. You've seen probably use cases of facial recognition or object recognition, detecting certain people or detecting a cat or some other object in an image. And then lastly, there's just like the video analysis side of it, which is taking the temporal components and understanding what's going on in a larger sequence of images. So that at a high level is kind of the problems that we're looking at talking about today.
Perfect. Okay, and then before, as I mentioned, we've done a lot of different projects with different clients. And the reason we're doing this webinar series is to help kind of share some of those lessons learned. But we also wanted to take a step back and figure out, is this really where the market's going? Is there a strong demand for these type of solutions? Where are people in this journey? Because even though we've seen and done a lot of this work in the past, you know, a lot of our clients are actually cutting edge, right? So is it just a sample that's ahead of the curve and getting into these things, and the larger enterprises that are taking a leap? Or is this really a more massive market trend? So we recently conducted and commissioned a report through IDG, where it wasn't actually interviewing just our clients like yourselves, but it was a broad spectrum of IT leaders and different businesses to see where they were with their AI and computer vision journey. And remarkably, across the board, it was really high marks. Of everyone is not only exploring AI and where they can utilize that, but they're going to increase their spend in this space. But more importantly, they really see some business value. So over 90% are thinking they can improve their operations or grow their revenue by implementing specifically computer vision. So that aligns with what we're seeing and some of the outcomes that we've helped our clients with. But it seems like it's something that's definitely on a lot of people's minds. And then when it comes to, you know, how do we actually get started? Because there's oftentimes we refer to Insight as a super solution integrator or a global system integrator, because you got to procure the devices, you've got to set up the models, you've got to set up the cloud. There's a lot of different aspects at play here that are all very custom. Then you actually deploy them into the field and update them in real time and update the models once they're deployed and manage them kind of completely end to end. And Insight can help in those capabilities. But clients themselves are saying, hey, we're looking for a partner that can help us you know, plan the whole end-to-end experience, which is a unique place for us to sit, because we're not just building the models or doing one aspect. We can help you across the board where it's needed. Everyone's different at different phases. Some have technical expertise, some have hardware expertise. So we can just plug in where and when is needed. Some fast facts, just to, again, set the stage before we get into the examples, is, you know, the technology, when it comes to cameras, they're 99% accurate. They're in all shapes and sizes, and they're all price points with different types of accuracy levels and precision. So the technology is in a good spot, whether you're installing something outdoors and industrial grade or indoors, or, you know, you're looking just to kind of install some smaller, lower, you know, cost devices on shelves and whatnot. We're in good shape on the camera side. So we're hitting the stride where the technology is ready to do this and the whole end-to-end ecosystem's in place. When you look at some of the use cases, but the actual overall market trends, employee accidents, you know, the title of this webinar series is about safety, but that's a big problem. $62 billion a year is going to workplace injuries. So are there ways that we can help you prevent that? So that's an area of focus. How do you keep people safe? Obviously, in the last year was unique. We deployed a lot of cameras that did thermal monitoring as employees kind of came back into work or customers. But this is a bigger, how do we just keep people in the right areas? How do we keep them safe? How do we prevent some of those workplace injuries, which will ultimately help keep your employees and your customers safe? And that's top of mind for us. On the sales and the ROI side, especially in manufacturing, it's 2.2% of sales are lost in scrap and rework, and it's a small percentage, but that's big when it comes to the bottom line. So we can help focus on reducing waste in whatever you're manufacturing. If it's a whole end-to-end product, if it's just a specific aspect, so you're not throwing out inventory of a certain type of, whatever kind of context that you're manufacturing, there's real value at the bottom line there. And then obviously we're all manufacturing things that we hope to ultimately sell. So shrinkage, it's more of a retail scenario, but how do we make sure that we're most wisely using our inventory, tracking inventory, selling product? And 7 out of 10 retailers said that their shrinkage rate is 1%. So again, not only are you improving the quality of what you're manufacturing and how we're storing that inventory, but if we can reduce the shrinkage, there's real money to be saved there at a big scale. And that's another 61x billion a year industry rate. So we're going to try and make this a little interactive along the way at the end of each section, if you just kind of weigh in here on what's on your mind. So the first poll that we've dropped in here is your organization currently using or considering computer vision? So where are you on that journey? A lot of clients already have some cameras deployed, some initial use cases. Maybe they're looking to improve the accuracy or expand out the same hardware into different use cases. Some are just in the early evaluations. Let us know where you are so that we can best assist or figure out how to tailor this talk track. So we'll give it about a minute at each of these poll questions, and then we'll see where everybody's at.
Yeah, and while people are answering that poll, I just wanted to talk through some of the different stages that an organization might be in that correspond to each of these answers. So if you're currently using computer vision, as Ilya said, you might be looking to improve accuracy or, usually there's a business objective at hand. So you're looking to either save money or open a new revenue stream. So someone who's currently using computer vision has a really good footing to add use cases and expand and make a real business impact without having to do the upfront initial investment that it took to get that set up in place. Someone who's considering or evaluating the use, they probably have a use case in mind. That's probably what's driving their evaluation. Some business use case that's gonna give them their return on investment. But they're probably still looking right now at the technology and implementation details and the cost to really figure out how everything is going to play out. And someone who's just planning to evaluate in the future, usually there's a use case or two that pegs your interest in computer vision and that really justifies your investment there. And so really that's more of the ideation phase and trying to find that use case that has a really big impact for your business.
Okay, so we'll kind of roll forward. We'll see where everybody is. And actually, as expected, it's kind of a little bit in each place, which we often find. So it's good to know, and we'll try to just hit all the bases as we kind of walk through today's content. Okay, so let's, again, as I mentioned, we just cherry-picked about 3 client stories to showcase specifically in manufacturing some of the use cases. And as mentioned previously, typically where we're seeing the most value is around safety, security, anomaly, and defect detection. So some of the examples we'll show. Just to kind of stick figure things out, which is something we like to do often, as we're ideating with our clients and understanding their problems, is literally just sketch out, here's how we're understanding what you're saying, because everyone's unique, they have different things. But at the same time, there's a lot of similarities between projects. So in this case, if you're thinking about employee safety, we've mocked up, hey, there's a Super Slicer 3000 in here. There's a guy on the floor. He might be looking at a tablet device or some paperwork or just not paying attention, and he enters into a danger zone. What we can do with cameras today is we can actually in the field of view of a camera, mark out where is the safe zones, where are the places that people aren't supposed to be. And the same would apply to security. Are there authorized areas and unauthorized areas? And then we can take action because this is all in real time. So someone makes an accident, there's human error involved in not just the products that you're creating, but how people are moving through the facilities. So we can then communicate if we detect someone in that danger zone and stop the device, but then sometimes you might not want to stop the device. You might actually just want to, buzz a beeper that the person's wearing, or use a signal tower to show an audible alert, or a video blinking light that something's happening. A lot of these times the floors are loud and noisy, so you might need a combination of different types of alerts. And we can do that all with computer vision. So computer vision detects where it's safe, and then it can communicate to these different devices. On the product quality and anomaly detection use case, this is where, you're taking the blobs as illustrated here, you're making them perfect square products that you can ship to your customers and everyone's happy. But if you mount a second camera further down the line, you can actually detect, is one of these square products that you're producing off? Is something wrong about it? And prevent, that from going to customers or shipping, to a retailer. So not only are you helping improve your logistics, but then you can also analyze, and we'll get into a little bit of how do you set up the models to train them? What are they looking for? And the camera can do this a lot more reliably than a human can, where you're checking and you're sitting over. We can get very accurate and precise with our measurements. So the first client story is on product quality using AI. This was a manufacturer of commercial generators, so pretty sophisticated machinery here. And they have a problem where they wanted to reduce scrap, as mentioned. So what we did is we actually used computer vision analytics in combination with machine learning and mounted cameras throughout their manufacturing process. So what they were seeing is, they would do spot checking of equipment, and at the end of the line, they would notice that there was issues, and they'd have to, scrap that and go back to the drawing board. And they wanted to see how could they improve that. So we mounted a series of cameras to detect it throughout the manufacturing process. And then what's actually interesting is not only were we able to catch flaws earlier and along the way, but we could actually then train why was the machine creating these flaws, and use and analyze that data to improve how we were actually manufacturing, how they were actually manufacturing the products and the generators that they were creating. So the outcome of this for them was 30% reduction in scrap, which is pretty astronomical ROI when you think about like 1 out of 3. They could catch this, they could improve not only, hey, we're not shipping a flawed product to somebody, we're not throwing this out. This has, significant impact to all lines of their business. Noah, anything to add on this story?
Yeah, I think the important thing to note, which I think you mentioned a little bit, is they were doing their QA step at the very end. And even if you just look at a picture like this, if you put a defective wire or coil in this generator, that's a lot of stuff that you've done with a defective part. So being able to catch that earlier on in the process is really imperative, and it shortens that feedback cycle so that you catch those errors earlier to reduce the waste. And image analysis for manufacturing has existed for a while, but it's been very imperative. You've had to say draw a line here, and does it go from dark to white to dark again? And all these like very manual techniques to try and identify where the defects are. Now with machine learning, which is what we leveraged here, you can just use a data set of known good products and known faulty products, and the machine just learns. So the deployment is a lot faster to get to a solution that you can actually use versus manually having to program that.
All right, good color commentary. So this is a great example of the product quality. If we shift to safety, which is often on people's minds as well, we had a regional steel recycler who wanted to use AI to improve on-the-job safety. So what does this mean? They have cranes, they've got big batches of metals, they're trying to process that and recycle that. And this one's an easy one to compute. If you think about someone that throws out a propane tank that might actually be full or have some propane left in it. It's metal, it goes to the scrap. that creates huge issues when they're processing it and they're melting the metals back down. There's actually, the result can be explosions that damages equipment, or worst case, puts their employees in harm's way. So they've always been thinking to themselves, there's got to be a better way, but having someone just look for it, as the cranes are picking this up, you're doing it in such bulk, it's hard for the human eye to detect these scenarios. You're also operating equipment, and it just wasn't feasible. So we worked with this client to train a computer vision model to identify those type of dangerous things. So you kind of know, hey, this is what a propane tank looks like. This is what some other hazardous metal materials that could be processed in look like, and build a model that you can then mount the camera on the crane boom. So as you're scooping it up, it can look for these objects and then take the appropriate action to kind of notify either the person that's running the crane or people that, hey, this is a bad batch, drop it over, and we can kind of pull the stuff out before it goes into the places that it's not supposed to be. So we don't have specifics. This is more a recent project. We don't have specific outcomes, which is actually a good thing in this case, because it's all preventative, right? You can count how many times did they prevent, blowing up their machines, but it was a big business. And according to the client, they're saving millions of dollars because this has happened repeatedly where they're at, it's just part of their core business. So the outcomes are pretty obvious. And really the ROI for them is if they can just reduce one injury or not have that, or put anyone at risk, even if they might not have had those cases, it's big rewards for everybody. Anything here, Noah?
Yeah. I think when people are looking for computer vision use cases, sometimes they look and ask, how can they augment something that a person does? But in this situation, some of these cameras are mounted on the crane itself. So it's unlocking things that even a human can't do. A human can't swing at the end of a crane and look down to see what the crane is picking up and say, oh, no, that's a propane tank. Like, that's just not a safe job. It's not a feasible job for a person to do. But now with computer vision, that actually becomes a reality. So you have to look beyond what people are doing in your existing processes and really understand how can this technology impact and further drive, in this case, safety.
Yeah, and this will be a tangent, but just, I was at the soccer field with my kids over the weekend. I ran into a friend who was actually in a similar company that mounts cameras and sensors onto cranes, but they can be used for a lot of other use cases as well, because you have such a good view from up high that you can now look at, are there other things in the field of view where people shouldn't be, or they can help take measurements to make sure that if you're in the construction industry and you're manufacturing, you're building stuff, they're starting to use computer vision models often mounted to the crane to kind of get a higher level view and do all sorts of different use cases. So it's just an example. Obviously, the cameras need to be pretty rugged. There's a lot of shaking. There's a lot of power that needs to go in here versus some other devices. So speaking of other devices, we manufacture. Oftentimes you have warehouses full of the products that you need to ship out to the different retailers. So this was a client story, and this will be the last one, and then we'll get into kind of the breakdown of a global manufacturer who had 60 different locations in 18 countries, right? So this is our almost a typical client of ours, where it's more the larger enterprise clients that have multi-site locations, lots of products going in different directions. And they wanted to help use AI and vision models to do bi-monthly cycle counts. They had 38,000 pallets of products across the US. Every, couple of weeks, they'd have to go through, they'd have to manually count these things, figure out where their products are, things have shipped, things are in process. And it's just a very labor intensive activity. And they also wanted to be inclusive. So how can they include employees of all skill levels to do some of these jobs? So we worked with this client, and we actually used tablet devices and the cameras on the devices to build a custom computer vision model to identify the products that were on the shelves. They could actually detect, it's a known set of here's where we store X, Y, and Z product, but it can actually read labels, and it can even just do those counts almost instantaneously just by pointing the tablet device up, and boom, you get all the data of counting. And this will tie into the demo that we've kind of put together for you today. But you can do it very efficiently. And then it actually tied into their ERP systems. So if there was an inconsistency of the products that are counted on the shelves and what the system was telling you, they could then take a manual action and go and double check, what's going on here. Is there something that's maybe sitting aside, that's in the inventory system, but maybe just not on the appropriate shelf? But it really helped to reduce the time it takes. You can be a lot more efficient with your staff to free them up to do other activities. This model is 93% accuracy, so you're constantly accurate. So you're constantly training it to become more and more accurate over time, and you might even augment your process and your labeling conventions to help in that effort. Interestingly, it took us 6 months to go from a pilot, right? Let's get something up and running quickly. Let's learn. Let's see the lighting conditions that are in this warehouse. What's the spacing of the shelves? Let's train everything, to a full production deployment. So in 6 months, we were able to work with the client, understand their business, understand their needs, and develop this initial pilot and take it to production. It's now in 8 warehouses. They're looking to expand that. And then what's also interesting is they're even considering licensing this technology, because there's a lot of folks that have a very similar setup, might be different products on their shelves, but they could benefit from this too. So it could actually generate new revenue streams for a company, not only to improve and make their processes more efficient, but then take that and generate business for other folks in the industry. And that's what we like to do a lot here. And the reason we're doing the webinar is share our learnings and our technology with others to help them get there quicker, run more efficiently, and stay competitive. So I think this is a good example. Similar scenarios for other clients that we don't get into. We have drones that have done this. So if you have really large warehouse facilities and you want to get a different point of view, we can actually deploy drones with cameras, fly them through the warehouse, take the same type of counting and inventory levels, and it's all instantaneous. So I think whether it's a robot, a tablet, we've done this on smartphones in a retail location. You can do pretty much any device and then build a new mobile application that's very user-friendly. So there's not a lot of training of how do I do this. It's pretty obvious. You just open up an app, point and shoot. The processing does all the work, and then instantaneously all that manual, hey, typing in these numbers goes away. Any color here, Noah, that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think you touched on it a little bit, but so far we've been talking about just cameras that are mounted, but those aren't the only cameras that people use. So Ilya, you mentioned drones. That's a use case we've seen quite a bit. Here in this image, you can see someone's using the camera on an iPad. So really, any kind of cameras that you can leverage are great to enable that use case for you on the computer vision side. And then secondly, for this use case in particular, the outcomes of this computer vision that you do, the goal is to have them have some kind of business impact. So there's going to be some kind of integration with an ERP system or some similar system. And I mean, I've worked with field service repair companies, and they inventory their they run inventory reconciliation once a month, and they realize they have millions of dollars of equipment that they didn't know about. There's no reason to really have that problem anymore. You can go around, you can quickly either fly drones around and inventory, or have someone do it manually with a camera. So these are really unlocking a lot of use cases to give people real-time information about their inventory.
Perfect. So as mentioned, we've also been recognized for a lot of these different client stories by Forrester, an analyst that did a specific report on computer vision, and they've kind of recognized Insight as a strong performer in this, which is one of the reasons that we're also doing the webinar today, is to kind of just share these lessons learned. So if you're looking at computer vision, I'm wondering, of the different use cases that we discussed today, is there one that sticks out that you might be more interested in the others? So go ahead, register your submission, and let us know what's on your mind and what areas your business would benefit from the most.
And as people are doing that, I just want to touch on a few of these. I guess, Ilya, you mentioned physical security. Not only can we detect things like someone entering a certain hot zone, but based on a video feed, you can look and see, is someone performing, I guess, activity that's unusual? Are they walking in certain patterns that are atypical for a worker in that area? There's a lot of different things you can do beyond just the actual physical security that you have, and the camera, essentially the problem of presence. And then with regard to inspection of assets or equipment, drones and things like that, when the camera's not mounted, you have less control of the lighting conditions, so it's a little bit harder of a problem, but these are still solvable.
Great. Okay, and we'll give everyone a couple more seconds to submit their vote for what comes top of mind. And just to hit on Noah's thing, in our stick figuring out drawing, even just the detecting is someone wearing a hard hat or not wearing a hard hat is something that can be easily identified. And then, sure, you might not, you might notify them, but what you can do at a more holistic level is you can take how often is that action happening, and can we improve our people process to train employees differently or enforce it, whereas typically it might just be a spot check or, hey, we're doing an inspection today, but really you want to keep people safe at all times, and cameras can give you the data to kind of make better business decisions. Okay, so we have some folks with some other use cases, and then mostly around product quality and safety. So that's to be expected. So good, thank you for that. Okay, Noah, why don't you just explain quickly the different components that are involved in computer vision, how this all comes together?
Sure. So I guess over the next few slides, we'll just demonstrate some of the core components that are needed. And afterwards, you'll see a demo where we kind of build a minimum viable product to show all of those different use cases working together in kind of a minified manufacturing setup. So let's just kind of go through that. So you start out and, this is, you're going to have some manufacturing setup here. In our example, we're using bottle manufacturing. So here's just a conveyor belt that has a bunch of bottles on it. And that's kind of the base setup that they have. So to implement computer vision and kind of an edge solution, we need two things. I guess earlier I mentioned we need eyes, right? So we're going to add a camera, and this camera is going to count the bottles that are going through. So that's the purpose of this camera. It can do other things, but just for this example, it's going to be counting the bottles that are going through this conveyor belt. And we have the eyes for our system. Now we need the brain, right? I mean, the eyes can be either a cheap camera for a proof of concept, or it can be a very sophisticated manufacturing camera that costs $10,000. But now we need the brains. What's going to actually process that? Sometimes some of the more recent cameras actually do have machine learning built into them, and you can put models on them, and it'll do some of the processing on the camera itself. But in other instances, you're going to need something to do the processing for you, so some kind of edge gateway. And the edge gateway doesn't have to be this big system. Here, I just have an edge gateway in my hands. Something like this is $500 or $600, and this has all the power that you would need for at least one application, usually 3 or 4 of these vision processing applications. So that's the edge gateway is where all that stuff happens. You need to provision some kind of operating system on it. In our demo, we use Windows with the Azure IoT Edge runtime because it integrates really well with Azure and gives us kind of an end-to-end solution. But yeah, the camera will take that stream of bottles going across the conveyor line, send that off to the edge gateway, and that's what's actually going to say, okay, I recognize a bottle and I'm counting it, and then aggregate that. And this is actually a full-fledged setup right here. You don't need any internet connection for this to run. So if you needed something to run in a place where you have maybe flaky internet connection, or your bandwidth is not so great, or even a place that's very remote where you might not even have an internet connection, or some kind of data center connection, this here will function as is and has no external dependencies. So it's a really good solution. It's very fast. And it operates at the speed that your equipment can operate at.
So yeah, and I think that's an important, so just to layer in, that's an important thing to recognize is the advantage of edge computing is the real-time, reaction. So say, for example, you're manufacturing these bottles and for some reason they're breaking or something was a little bit off, you want to stop that immediately. Or if, someone put their hand in the way of something and it shouldn't be there, you could detect, hey, something is wrong, let's stop the machinery to prevent that. So edge computing, regardless of the cloud, enables that real-time response, immediately, and then we'll let you get into like where the cloud fits in as well.
Exactly. All these things are feet or meters away, and if there are any interactions between them, they're extremely fast, and there's also as few dependencies or places to fail as possible. So in something like an employee safety use case, you have a high degree of confidence that this will be appropriate for you and not fail on you. So now that we have that situation set up, you're going to want to do a few things. You're going to want to manage that edge device in some way. You probably want it to be part of your IT system that your IT team maintains. And you're also going to want to update the software that's that's doing the image analysis and the video analysis for the camera. You're going to want to update the operating system that edge device is running on. So that's where you can integrate back into the cloud. And also, you're able to push data from this facility, this East Coast plant, as it says here, and actually take some of that data and store it in either your databases or your data lakes or what have you. And the data that gets pushed back doesn't have to be the entirety of the data that is generated by the camera. So, for example, the camera is generating a bunch of video, and that video is processed by the edge gateway. But that high bandwidth application doesn't need to hit the internet or go to the cloud through a VPN or a private link. So the advantage here is that only things that are relevant can get pushed out to the cloud. And then lastly, once it's actually in the cloud, something like Azure, which integrates nicely with the IoT Edge product, then other people can go ahead and look at it. They can inspect the data, they can manage the devices, as I said. So that's kind of the end-to-end link where someone who's not even in the facility is able to not only see the results of the system, but kind of monitor it and operate it. So there are a few personas. Example, so someone like IT, as I said, they can manage that edge gateway for you so that it's up to date, it has the latest software, it has the most recent models for whatever your application is or algorithms or what have you. Your operations team can see the status of the equipment and see, is everything being manufactured according to what you're expecting. Your business people can go in and look and see essentially, what are we actually generating or what are we actually manufacturing? They can tie that up to orders. And then sales and support can kind of have a real-time view into what is the actual, if you have a few stages of manufacturing, you can actually see, all right, this many of these things of your order has been created at this stage. And as it goes through, you can have more of a real-time view and transparent view for the customer.
Right. So you can kind of pipe now that everything's in the cloud, the different folks can handle their line of business and what information is relevant to them. And I think that's an important thing. There's so much data being generated and different people use it different way that you can kind of alert folks, hey, you're in, we made what the client was waiting for, let the salesperson know to improve customer service. You're just trying to manage these from an IT perspective. You're managing devices, making sure everything's up and running smoothly, or you're training the models. How do I push that back down and improve our business procedures? So it's quite the enabler, but you can also route the data to the right folks to take actions to improve your overall, in this case, manufacturing business end to end.
Exactly. Thank you, Ilya. So once you've made it to this stage, you've you're in it. You're in the club. You've done it because this is the hardest part to get a lot of this working end to end. So what can we do from here? Using the same infrastructure that we've laid down, now we can actually quickly add additional use cases on that same backbone. So we can add another camera to do anomaly detection or defect detection, or you could even potentially, based on how the camera is positioned for the first use case to do product counting, you could even reuse that camera to do two different applications. But now you can easily and quickly add and stamp out new use cases, and it's really just what the limiter is not getting all this integration set up. It's now what are the use cases that you can think of, and what are the use cases that you can actually implement from a software perspective. So here we've just added an anomaly detection use case, and you'll see these two different use cases at play in the demo that we put together.
Yeah, and I think one of the values that we add is you set it up. You might start with a pilot or a POC of some sort, or you might already, as people mentioned, they're already kind of on their journey and have some of this equipment. So now you can leverage your same investment in the hardware and the software, the edge, the cloud, and just start rolling out additional use cases and training it. The value is we can also help. What is the right camera, right? Like, what is your situation? What field of view? Do you need multiple cameras to achieve your use case? Can you use the same camera? is the edge gateway that we deployed for the pilot going to be the right equipment to scale, right? Like as we ideate through what's the art of the possible, where can we improve your business, but we have to get started somewhere. We can kind of help future-proof your investment, not just to solve your immediate needs and show the first ROI, but make sure that you can then leverage the same system and scale that up and make sure that the devices from all of our different partners that we work with are kind of fit for your needs now, but then also into the future.
Exactly. Thank you, Ilya. So just to keep building on our example, we had everything set up in a single plant. Now we can go ahead and scale out to multiple plants. And you can see, again, once you've hit that kind of crossing over point, now the backbone is there, and it's really just more, you're just kind of reusing the same pattern that you've already implemented and that works to roll it out to more and more facilities. So this is just kind of an end-to-end example with a kind of cartoon diagram to help break down the different pieces. Ilya, anything you want to add before moving forward?
No, but this is where, like, oftentimes you start with a POC, one location, one line of business, just to get some balls moving before, like, inviting the whole, team aboard. But we typically, and we'll get to it in how we approach this, you just want to make sure people know what's going on the front end, but the value starts coming as we scale this out. You now have multiple sites, multiple lines of businesses, multiple use cases, and you're aggregating all that data into the cloud to really do those improved business insights. You're getting data that you can work with and see, hey, this plant is operating more efficiently than this, or this one is safer. What are they doing differently? And you can take those learnings and apply them to optimize your business in all sorts of ways, and often ways that you never even knew of, right? So I think the value that we've learned is it's really not easy to go multi-site. Like oftentimes, you think, hey, I can put a camera and I can install this in my house. Like, what's so hard? But when you do this at scale at multiple locations and you're coordinating with the facilities manager and the people that are on site and running the networking, there's a lot of logistics that our connected workforce team here at Insight can actually bring the right technicians. And do they need ladders with them, or is it going to be mounted where? And in manufacturing, oftentimes, according to the IGG report and our experience, is, oftentimes the manufacturing, no one's letting us near that equipment, right? Like, it's very precise. But we'll work with you to kind of make sure you understand how these things need to be set up, what's the lighting conditions, what's the best angles, but let you integrate with your equipment where it makes sense, and we can just augment your support and your expertise as needed.
Cool. You want to take over the poll, Ilya?
Sure. So again, we're just a quick poll to make sure everyone's still with us, and feel free to drop questions if you have them into the chat. Where are you? Like, do you have cameras deployed in your facilities? And if so, are they newer ones? Is it something that you've deployed over the last 5 years? Are they older than 5 years? Do you not have any, or is this not even applicable to your line of business? Let us know where you are with your equipment. If they're newer devices, oftentimes you can just leverage equipment that you might have, but it does come down to frame rates for use cases, or the quality of the camera and the imaging, in order to kind of really more accurately gain that insights from the data that's coming through. But our goal is to reuse as much equipment that's possible, so you get the most value. But then as you cycle that out, and a lot of folks know us just for our VAR capabilities, we can work with you to keep your devices relevant, recommend new things, and it's kind of a repeating process of, hey, I'm coming up on needing new devices. They're at the end of the life cycle. What should we put in next? And kind of think for the next 5 years or 3 years down the line as technology advances. All right, so we'll just click through here. And it looks like a lot of folks that, have some older devices installed, some don't have any. So it would be, it sounds like more than likely some folks are looking to install newer equipment and just kind of hit the ground running in new ways, which is exciting. All right, we have about 15 minutes left. Just a time check here. Noah, why don't you kind of walk through the demo setup to show it in action, sometimes talking through slides, and hopefully we have a good foundation, but why don't you show how these pieces come together? And keep in mind, just to set up the stage for you, a couple weeks ago we said, hey, how do we showcase this in the new world where we're doing everything over Teams or video chat? So we try to miniaturize a manufacturing plant as small as possible. So take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, it's not industrial grade equipment, but it's solely built for the purpose of how can we show these components in action. So take it away, Noah.
Exactly. Thanks, Ilya. So as you said, an MVP of all the different components to show how they work and interrelate and get it working end to end. So really what we're showing here is two use cases. We have a lime soda and a cola. They're going through the processing plant, and there's two use cases. One is a product counting use case, so it'll be counting how many bottles are in each crate. So there are 12 bottles in a crate. So we'll see an instance where there aren't 12 bottles in a crate, and it kind of can detect that. And then also whether or not the product is on the right line. So in a multi-line setup, if the product is kind of sent off into a different location where it's not supposed to be, it's able to detect that as well. So just a few elements of the demo itself, just to talk about like what is actually behind it. So there is essentially the conveyor setup, the belt, the product that we're placing through the little conveyor belt. There's a camera, essentially a small webcam, and then there's an edge device, which is actually exactly what I'm holding up here, this Intel device here, or Lenovo device rather. And then on the software side, there are a few different things that are needed there. So some dashboards so that you can kind of see the operations and status of the equipment. And behind the scenes, before even filming the demo, or you had to find some way to securely integrate these devices into your system and manage them. Then there's the actual software to do the use case that we want, so counting the products or detecting the lime or cola variants to see whether or not they're on the right line. And then when there is some kind of anomaly, what do you actually do with it? You need to have some alerting system, which we've built out as well. A user management system so that certain people can have various access rights to certain parts of the application and system for their appropriate roles. And then workload management. How do you actually deploy this stuff onto the edge device? And the edge device itself, as I mentioned, it's running the Azure IoT Edge runtime. It's essentially taking video from that camera and executing these models against it to do the various use cases. So with that, why don't we take a look at the video?
Hi, my name is Amol Asgaonkar. I'm the CTO for Intelligent Edge at Insight, a Fortune 500 global systems integrator and leading provider of intelligent technology solutions. Welcome to the demo of computer vision. Today I'll be using a scale model to give you an inside look at how computer vision works and how it can be applied to deliver value in a manufacturing environment. To get a sense of how real-time alerts and video analytics come together in a real world, we'll be taking a look at soda bottles on a conveyor belt in a manufacturing plant. So let's take a look at the setup we have in front of us. The motor governor decides the speed of the conveyor belt. We have the product in front of us, which are soda bottles, a crate of soda bottles. We have the camera here that is pointing down on the conveyor belt that detects the number of bottles we have. So even with the smaller cameras that we have in this scale model, we are getting a really good accurate reading. But when we deploy a similar solution at scale in a manufacturing facility using real high-end cameras, we get even better accuracy. So when the crate actually moves on the conveyor belt, the video feed is sent to the edge device, which is an Intel Core i5 with vPro chipset in it. That is doing all the heavy lifting. The vPro also helps us with out-of-band management so that we can remotely manage the workloads as well as the device from anywhere in the world. So when the video feed is sent to the edge device analyzes the feed, this is the heavy lifting, and then detects the number of bottles it has and what type of bottles they are, what type of soda is actually on the conveyor belt. So this conveyor belt is actually assigned to cola, a different soda product. And right now what we have is a lime product. So this will actually turn up as an anomaly in our analysis. So let's see how that works. So as you can see here, it's indicating an anomaly. It did detect the right product, but it was on the wrong conveyor belt, and that's why it's an anomaly. It also shows you the number of crates, and it said, hey, there were no other cola products on that conveyor belt. So now let's put the right product on the right conveyor belt. So we have the cola on the conveyor belt, which is assigned to, and we'll make it go through the system. The camera will detect the number of bottles we have. And just to make it interesting, I've removed 2 bottles from that crate. So instead of 12, there are actually 10 bottles in that crate. So let's make it go through and see what happens. So now when we put the right cola product on the right conveyor belt, we can see that there were 10. Remember, we removed 2 bottles from that crate. So now there were 10 on that crate. It counted 10 bottles, and that is what we can see here. Also, we have 0 anomalies because we do have the right product on the right conveyor belt. That information is then sent to Insight's Edge Accelerator that is hosted in Azure. All the other processing that needs to be done is done in Azure, and then the information is then displayed on the portal. Then you can see it in Azure from anywhere in the world. Thanks for watching. Let's get back to the rest of today's webinar.
All right, pretty neat, right? So that's essentially the demo MVP'd out so that you can see each of the different components in a miniaturized fashion. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the lessons learned and tips from essentially the process of building this, and also considerations that you might want to have when you're looking at your own computer vision projects. So the first is image processing versus machine learning approaches. So image processing techniques for computer vision have been around for a while and used in manufacturing for a while. But as I said earlier, machine learning really excels at being able to bring a use case to bear really quickly. Instead of having to really understand and program different facets of like what a product should look like, and trying to find different ways that you can maybe draw lines or circles or count things to detect whether or not something is correct. With a data set of essentially labeled good and bad product images, essentially you can learn you can train a model in the cloud to learn what is essentially a good and bad product. And so with that, if you have an integration with the cloud already, you can train this in Azure, and you can get that model back in 24 hours or less, and go ahead and test it and see what the accuracy is. So machine learning also enables like more complicated approaches, like they're being used on things like potato chips, where there's no real clear way to know what's good or bad. You just ask users, is this good or bad? And then they kind of go ahead and that's it. So that's one. Device management is another. As I said, you've got to manage these devices somehow. As Ilya said earlier in the webinar, dealing with hardware, there are a lot of things to consider. In Insight, we can help you with all of that stuff. I mentioned earlier camera parameters and how that determines how accurate things are. There's exposure, and that has to line up with your belt speed and stuff like that. So there's some integration at play, and again, we can help you with that. And then, as I said, once you kind of have that infrastructure up front, it's incrementally less cost to scale out, and you see the more you scale out, the more you see the return. So Ilya, back to you for, I guess, the final segment. I guess Ilya is a little frozen, so I'll take it over. So I guess at Insight here, we have a bunch of different capabilities. As Ilya and I have been saying throughout the webinar, we're an end-to-end partner. We consider ourselves a super solution integrator. So whether or not you need to procure the hardware, such as the cameras or the edge devices, or even work to ideate on what use cases you want, and actually build that out and test it and deploy it within your facility. That's something that we do end-to-end. And the fact that we're an end-to-end partner is really helpful for our customers, because they're not going to a certain partner for this and a certain partner for that. Like, we can manage the entire process and essentially own that for you, so that you're going through us exclusively for that entire business outcome that you're trying to achieve. So a little bit about Insight. We have essentially a very large global technical team where we focus a lot on building modern applications, specifically around computer vision and edge. We do a lot of work with cloud, and cloud and edge kind of go together pretty well. We're a $3 billion reseller of public cloud. And we have 500 engineers that are certified to do this kind of work, whether it's applications or cloud or machine learning or data. So we have a very extensive team to essentially bring to bear for your specific use case. So don't just necessarily take it from us. We're also extremely credentialed in a lot of different areas, and we work with an extensive network of partners. So in particular, we're the 2020 U.S. Microsoft Partner of the Year, but we also work with a lot of different partners as well. So Intel, Google, AWS, Databricks. We work with a bunch of different partners. And again, as that end-to-end super solution integrator, we're able to we have this extensive network of partners that we're able to reach out to. So in terms of trying to get the right relationships to procure the specific hardware that you need, we're very, very versed in that kind of project to engage with you. Ilya, do you want to, looks like you're back, do you want to walk through the envisioning workshop?
Yep, sure can. So typically, how do you get started? So specifically to computer vision, we have an envisioning workshop that we work with clients to help figure out where to get started and things that they can expect out of that to start an initial project. So typically, there's a few days, even though it's a half day to a full day workshop where we come together with our experts in different domains, as well as your different lines of businesses, there's usually a 2 to 3 days worth of preparation. Interview the different stakeholders to actually prepare a more efficient workshop. We do some market analysis to understand, who are the different device makers that will apply to your industry and your use cases, so that we can bring some recommendations or at least some ideas initially to the workshop and have a discussion around it, but point at things, show how they work, show, successes that we're seeing in the market. And then we'll run the workshop, but we'll identify what all is on different people's minds, where can AI and the possibilities and what requirements would be involved to kind of hit your business goals utilizing the different technology, and what stub out some loose architectures. What system are you on? If you're on Microsoft Azure, what components are you using? Where do you need help? Where can you already tie into things that you already have in place? And then out of the workshop, the output is you get a readout. So 3 to 5 days later, we come back to you and we say, hey, we've mapped out, essentially here's a now, a next, and a later plan. We took all this feedback from all the different lines of businesses. We've identified the best place to start where you're going to see the most ROI in the shortest amount of time to kind of prove those business case, get, we know how this works, get some executive sponsorship, rally the troops of why this is cool and how it can actually have some real results. And typically we can do that in a very short amount of time. We're talking weeks or maybe a couple months to kind of prove something from an idea to getting something up and running in a prototype and a pilot type of way, and then scale and say, hey, the next things, if this proves successful, here's where we go next, because you can just layer this on, you bought the hardware, and we can add different use cases. So you'll walk away with, here's a plan for you to get started, for you to move into the future with us, and then we can start working getting our teams to work together and forming that partnership, because it's really a journey together, and we pull in the right players and help assist you in those efforts. So I think that pretty much wraps up our webinar today. Definitely reach out to learn more at insight.com if this is something that you're interested in. If you already have an account rep, reach out to them and we'll assist. We'd love to do work. This is really exciting stuff, to showcase and see people not just put in cool tech and toys, but show that business value. And then we'll just wrap it up with one last video that helps showcase all sorts of different use cases in manufacturing and where we've seen the most value. We would appreciate at the end if you could take the survey and let us know if this was relevant, so we can improve our webinars moving forward, what you'd like to dive more deeply in. But reach out and we can answer any questions and figure out how to get started together. So I think we'll roll the video, and we appreciate your time here today. Thank you for joining us. We hope to talk to you soon.
What if there was a smarter way to manage manufacturing? What if you could ensure every product off the line was up to the highest quality standards? What if you could repair equipment before it failed? What if you could keep your workers safer? What if out of sight didn't mean out of mind? What if you could prevent those common mistakes? And what if you could do all this by building on your existing infrastructure? With computer vision and the intelligent edge, modern manufacturing organizations are transforming challenges into opportunities to keep employees safer, eliminate waste, reduce downtime, and gain a competitive advantage, all while freeing your workforce to focus on the work that matters most and empowering leaders to make data-driven decisions faster. So what would you do if you could? See what's possible with Insight.